There are tractors people remember, and then there are tractors families never forgot, machines that started before sunrise, worked through dust, snow, and hard years, then stayed on the farm long enough for sons and grandsons to take the same seat behind the wheel, and the deeper we go into this list, the stronger those legends become. Oliver 77. There was something honest about the old Oliver 77, maybe it was the deep green paint fading under years of sun, maybe it was the steady sound of that six-cylinder engine rolling across a hay field on a hot July afternoon, or maybe it was because farmers knew this tractor would keep showing up for work long after newer machines had already broken down. When the Oliver 77 arrived in the late 1940s, America was changing fast, farms were growing, horses were disappearing from the fields, and families needed tractors strong enough to handle long days without draining every dollar they had saved. The 77 fit that moment perfectly. With around 38 to 40 horsepower depending on configuration, it was powerful enough for plowing, cultivating, belt work, and hauling loaded wagons through muddy Midwest farm lanes. Back then, a new Oliver 77 cost somewhere around $3,000. For many families, that kind of money was enormous. Some farmers talked about it for months before signing the papers, but once the tractor came home, it rarely disappointed them. The engine started reliably in cold mornings, the wide stance gave it stability in rough ground, and that smooth six-cylinder sound became part of daily life on thousands of farms across America. You still hear stories today about Oliver tractors sitting in machine sheds for years, then firing back to life with fresh fuel and a little patience. That kind of durability created trust. Fathers handed them down to sons, sons handed them down to grandkids, and even after decades of work, many of those tractors still carry the scars of real farming, worn drawbars, faded decals, and steel polished smooth by hardworking hands. But as dependable as the Oliver 77 was, another small tractor would eventually prove that true durability did not always come from size or horsepower alone. Massey Ferguson 35. The Massey Ferguson 35 never looked like the biggest tractor on the farm. It sat lower to the ground, lighter, simpler, but that little machine earned a reputation that reached far beyond its size. On small family farms across the Midwest and beyond, the 35 became the kind of tractor people trusted almost without thinking. You could find one pulling a two-bottom plow through black Iowa soil in spring. Then a few months later, the same tractor might be raking hay under the heat of August or carrying feed through deep snow in January. It was not flashy, it did not need to be. Farmers respected machines that simply kept working, and the Massey Ferguson 35 did exactly that. Introduced in the late 1950s, the tractor produced roughly 37 horsepower depending on engine choice. Gasoline and diesel versions both earned loyal followings. The Perkins diesel especially became famous for reliability and fuel economy. Many farmers swore those engines could run forever if they were treated right, and for families trying to survive uncertain crop prices and difficult seasons, that mattered. A new Massey Ferguson 35 often sold for around $2,500 in its day. That was still a serious investment for working families. Some farmers traded livestock or delayed other purchases just to afford one, but the tractor quickly proved its value. It handled chores that once required multiple horses and endless hours of labor. More importantly, it did so without demanding constant repairs. There was also something personal about the 35. Its smaller frame made it less intimidating for younger drivers. Many sons and daughters learned how to drive on one sitting beside their father on cold mornings before school. Even today, older farmers still smile when they hear that familiar Perkins diesel chatter drifting across a field. And yet, for all the memories tied to the Massey Ferguson 35, another tractor, painted in bright red, would become one of the most recognizable workhorses America had ever seen. Ford 8N. Few tractors ever became part of American farm life the way the Ford 8N did. Even people who never farmed a single acre could recognize its shape. The rounded hood, the narrow stance, the faded red belly beneath weathered gray paint. It was the kind of tractor that seemed to exist everywhere, parked beside old barns, sitting under cottonwood trees, or idling slowly down gravel roads at sunrise. When the Ford 8N arrived in 1947, many small farms were still trying to recover from hard economic years and the aftermath of war, farmers needed equipment that was affordable, dependable, and easy to maintain without expensive repairs. Ford answered with a machine simple enough for ordinary families to keep running with basic tools and determination. The 8N produced around 23 horsepower at the PTO, which may not sound impressive today, but on small farms, it could change everything. It pulled plows through garden ground, cut hay, hauled firewood, and powered countless belt-driven machines. More importantly, it allowed families to do more work with fewer hands at a time when labor was becoming harder to find. Back then, a brand new Ford 8N sold for roughly $1,400 to $1,600 depending on equipment and location. For many returning veterans and young farm families, it represented one of the first truly reachable tractors they could afford. Some bought them with crop loans, others saved for years, and once that tractor rolled onto the farm, it often stayed there for decades. Part of the reason was its simplicity. Farmers could repair much of the tractor themselves in a small shed with a wrench set and an oil-stained manual. There were no computers, no complicated electronics, just steel, gears, grease, and an engine willing to work through long seasons. Even now, more than 70 years later, thousands of Ford 8NS are still running. Some still mow fields every summer, others appear in small town parades driven by grandchildren whose grandparents once depended on them every single day. But eventually, American farms demanded more power, more hydraulics, and a tractor capable of carrying families into a new generation of farming altogether. John Deere 3020. By the 1960s, American farming was changing faster than ever before. Fields were getting larger, implements were getting heavier, and farmers needed tractors that could survive endless hours in the field without losing the reliability older generations depended on. That was the world the John Deere 3020 stepped into, and it quickly became one of the most respected tractors of its era. There was a confidence to the 3020 the moment you saw it, the green paint glowing under the morning sun, the squared body lines, the steady rumble of that engine echoing across open farmland before daylight fully arrived. It looked modern for its time, but it still carried the rugged soul farmers trusted. Built from 1964 into the early 1970s, the John Deere 3020 delivered around 70 horsepower depending on fuel type and configuration. Gasoline, diesel, and LP versions all found loyal owners, whether it was pulling chisel plows, running balers, planting corn, or hauling loaded wagons during harvest. The 3020 handled jobs that pushed smaller tractors beyond their limits. But what truly made the tractor legendary was durability. These machines were built for families who could not afford downtime in the middle of planting or harvest season. Many farmers still remember the sound of a 3020 starting on cold mornings after sitting outside all night in freezing weather. It was dependable in a way modern equipment sometimes struggles to match. Back then, a new John Deere 3020 often cost somewhere around $7,000 depending on options. That was serious money in the 1960s. For some families, it represented years of savings and one of the largest purchases they would ever make outside the farm itself. But owners rarely regretted it. The tractor worked season after season, year after year, often staying productive long after the payments were forgotten. Even today, restored 3020s continue to appear at county fairs and tractor pulls across the Midwest, and many are not restored at all. They are still working, paint faded, tires worn, hour meters long broken, yet somehow still earning their keep on the same land their original owners once farmed. And still, despite all the strength and reputation of the John Deere 3020, one older red tractor would become the very definition of a machine built to outlive generations. Farmall M. There are tractors that worked hard, and then there are tractors that became part of the family itself. The Farmall M was one of those machines. Across the Midwest, its sound carried through cornfields before sunrise for so many years that entire generations grew up believing farming simply would not happen without it. Introduced in 1939, the Farmall M arrived during one of the hardest periods rural America had ever faced. Farmers were climbing out of the Great Depression while uncertainty spread across the world, money was tight, equipment had to last, and when families invested in a tractor, they expected it to survive decades of punishment. Somehow, the Farmall M managed to do exactly that. With roughly 38 to 40 horsepower depending on setup, the M became the backbone of countless farms. It plowed fields in spring mud, pulled wagons heavy with ear corn during harvest, powered threshers, balers, and feed grinders through endless seasons of work, and unlike many machines of its time, it earned a reputation for taking abuse without giving up. Back then, a new Farmall M sold for around $2,000, for many families in the 40s, that was an enormous commitment. Some farmers compared it to buying a piece of land, others spent years making payments while hoping crop prices stayed strong enough to survive another season. But once the tractor arrived at the farm, it often stayed there for the rest of a farmer's working life. There was a rugged simplicity to the Farmall M that people still admire today, the big rear wheels gripping loose soil, the steady 4-cylinder engine beating like an old clock under the hood. Farmers could repair much of it themselves with basic tools, hard work, and experience passed down from father to son, and maybe that is why so many Farmall MS survived, even after sitting forgotten in barns for decades. Many still roar back to life with fresh fuel and patience. Some are restored for shows now. Others still rake hay and pull wagons on small farms across America, not because they have to, but because people trust them. For countless farming families, the Farmall M was never just machinery, it was the tractor that carried them through droughts, low crop prices, brutal winters, and the long uncertain years when survival depended on whether the machine started one more morning. And that kind of loyalty is something no generation ever forgets. These old tractors were never just machines, they were part of the family, working through droughts, harvests, and generations of American farm life, and even today, many are still running on the same land they worked decades ago. So tell us in the comments, which classic tractor will your family never forget?